everybody. So in this video I want to talk to you about a new electronic device, and this is the potentiometer. Now a potentiometer is a super important, super useful device, and it functions more or less like a variable resistor with a few extra little details. Now before we get into the potentiometer, let's first of all review the voltage divider. So what we've looked at with the voltage divider so far is, imagine we've got a 5-volt source and we want to split that 5-volt source or divide it into something a little bit smaller. So we can configure a voltage divider to do this task. And remember the analogy of voltage being like an electrical height. So 5 volts is up at the top of the hill. As we flow through the first resistor, we go down a little bit, and then as we flow through the second resistor, we go down all the rest of the way to ground. And so if we go through one resistor and then measure the voltage or the electrical height at that location, it's somewhere in between ground and the top voltage. And we've utilized this principle for all sorts of important things, ranging from the photoresistor to the thermistor, and various things like that. What might be nice is if we could have a voltage divider that we could control where this output is without having to actually go in and manually put in different resistors. So this is what the potentiometer does. It's a 3-terminal device, and if you want to use it like a voltage divider, you can connect the outer 2 terminals to 5 volts and ground, or really whatever your 2 voltages are. And then the 3rd terminal, the terminal in the middle of the potentiometer, is what is sometimes known as the wiper terminal. And so that terminal would be at Vout. And then a lot of these potentiometers, they've got a knob that you turn, or sometimes there's a slider. And what that's doing is that's varying the resistances on either side. So if we turn the knob all the way in one direction, we might make this resistor really, really big and this one really, really small. And so we'll pull the voltage really low. If we were to turn the potentiometer the other direction, we might make this resistor really big and this one really small. And so it would move that voltage up closer to the 5 volts. One of the symbols that you'll see sometimes for a potentiometer is a resistor with an arrow there, and so these 2 terminals are the outside of the potentiometer, and so they're across the entire resistor, and then this terminal here would be the wiper terminal. It's sometimes called the wiper terminal because you can imagine wiping like a windshield wiper through different values here, and it essentially splits that single resistor into 2 resistors. So if we had this as our 5 volts, this going to ground, and this going to Vout. So we'll use this in combination with the Arduino to come up with a way to make any voltage between 0 and 5 volts by turning a knob, or in the case of the joystick, we're going to actually slide it back and forth. And so we can use that to give input to our different circuits. So let's take a look at some of the different things that we can do with the potentiometer. Okay, so here is a real potentiometer, and like I said, they come in all sorts of different sizes and shapes and packages, but this is the one that comes with the Arduino Super Starter kit that we'll be using. And you can see it's got the 3 terminals here, and these 2 outer terminals, these are across the entire resistance of the potentiometer, and this middle terminal is the wiper terminal. So as we turn this knob up here, that's going to wipe that middle terminal back and forth between the extremes of the resistance. So I'm going to go ahead and hook this up, and show you how I've got it hooked up, and then we're going to just try reading the wiper terminal voltage into the Arduino and see how as we turn the knob we can get different voltage readings. So now I've got the potentiometer plugged into the breadboard. This particular potentiometer works best if it spans the trench so that the two outer pins are on one side and the wiper terminal is on the other side. I've got it hooked up in the voltage divider configuration, so one end of the potentiometer goes to ground or the negative terminal, the other end goes to positive or 5 volts, and then I've got the wiper terminal going into the analog 0 terminal. And I'll be able to adjust this by turning the knob back and forth. So I'm going to bring in the Arduino code and we'll take a look using the serial monitor like we've done before and see how this works. Okay, so now I've got the Arduino hooked up to the computer, and I've got our basic serial read code so that I can look at what signals coming in from the wiper into channel A0. I've got the code up. I'm not going to go over the code again. We've looked at this a couple of times now, so hopefully you're familiar with this bit of code. I'm going to pull up the serial monitor and let's take a look at what happens here. So remember, the serial monitor, it gives us a number between 0 and 1023. 0 is 0 volts, 1023 is 5 volts. And so right now we're reading a little over 500, so that means we're kind of in the middle, about 2.5 volts, give or take. So let me go ahead and turn the knob. If I turn it to the far extreme, I've moved the wiper all the way to the 5 volt terminal, or over to this pin over here. And so the wiper is essentially at 5 volts, the power rail, and so we see 1023. Let me go ahead and turn it to the other extreme. So now I've turned it to the other extreme, and now the wiper is all the way over at the negative terminal, reading 0. And I can turn this and make it go to all sorts of different values in between. So depending on where I put it, I can get any value I like. And so this is a really nice way to have a sort of a tactile or user-controlled input. And I can do some neat stuff with this input. What I'm going to show you now, I'm going to bring in an LED, and we're going to look at how we can make the LED brighter or dimmer using this potentiometer. Okay, so now I've brought in an LED, and what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to control the brightness of this LED with the potentiometer. So as we turn the potentiometer, the hope is we're going to make this light brighter and brighter, and then if we turn it the other way, we'll make it dimmer and dimmer, so that we can cycle the light from either all the way on to either all the way off using the potentiometer, much like a dimmer switch. So before we can do that, we need to figure out, first of all, how we can make the light brighter or dimmer using the Arduino. So what I've done is I've connected the LED through a 220 ohm resistor to the negative rail, and then the other end is going to channel 11. Now, in order to be able to control the brightness, we have to use the channels with the little squiggles on them. And so channel 11 is one of those special channels that will allow us to do that. Now let's take a look at the code. So I've stripped the code down to its bare minimum for this first example, and let's take a look at what we've got. So first of all, I've defined a new variable called brightness. So that's going to correspond to how bright we want the light to be. It's an integer, so it's just going to have values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way on up to whatever we like. And I'm setting it equal to 0 to start with. So 0 is going to correspond to the light completely off. The maximum value is actually 255. That'll be all the way on. So let me change this. Oh, actually before I do, let's go through the rest of the code. I need to declare the pin mode. So pin 11 is going to be the output. This is what's controlling the LED. And the new command, instead of digital write, I'm using a new command called analog write. This allows me to turn channel 11 not either fully on or fully off, but somewhere in between using brightness. So whatever I give to brightness, that'll be how much this channel is on. So at 0, it's fully off. At 255, it's all the way on, and I can go in between for medium brightnesses. I'm not putting anything in the loop to start with. I'm just going to show you how you can turn the light on and make it brighter or dimmer. So right now it's at 0, so the LED is off. Let's go to the maximum value and change that to 255. And we'll go ahead and upload this. And now you can see the light is all the way on. Let's go for half brightness, so something around 125, give or take. And hopefully you can see that on the camera. It's a little bit dimmer. Let me go for something much dimmer. Let's try 10. And there you should hopefully be able to see that that's quite a bit dimmer. So this is going to allow us to, this command here, this analog write, allows us to dim or brighten the LED. So now we need to figure out how to take the signal coming from our wiper terminal potentiometer and convert that into the brightness. So let me bring in the rest of the code and we'll go over that. Okay, so now I brought in the rest of the code. So let's go through this all together. So again, we're initializing the brightness equal to 0, so the light's initially off. Setting pin 11 to be the output. Writing it so that pin 11 is initially off, so the LED is off. Now we're going back to our analog read command. So this is reading in what's coming in to channel A0. And that corresponds to the wiper voltage. Now we've got a little bit of a problem because remember the wiper signal going in can go from 0 to 1023, and the brightness of the LED can go from 0 to 255. So there's a little bit of a mismatch. So what we need to do is we need to map sensor value from 0 to 123 over to 0 to 255 onto the variable brightness. So what this is doing, this is taking sensor value, which we've got from analog read, and sensor value, remember, it ranges from 0 to a maximum value of 1023. We want it to now go to a new range of 0 to 255. So whenever sensor value is 0, brightness will be 0. Whenever sensor value is 1023, brightness will be 255. And this will work for any values in between these values. So 500, value of 500 for sensor value will map onto brightness somewhere around 125. Then we can take that and write channel 11, write our LED to that particular brightness. So let's go ahead and upload this and see what happens. So now LED's on. Let me turn the potentiometer. I'll get it really bright. I'll turn it the other way. It gets so dim it turns off, and I can get any brightness I like. So pretty cool.